The way things are heading, physical media may soon well be a thing of the past, so I'm enjoying it while I can, so stay tuned to see what I have been reading. Welcome back. Now, as I just said, it does seem as if physical media is definitely getting phased out. But fortunately, I still have enough in my possession that I can still enjoy the experience that I used to enjoy as a kid, opening up some of my favourite books. So I thought I would share with you what I have been reading as of late. They're starting off with the Toy Polloi Annual, which was very kindly sent to me by my friend Derek over in Scotland. Now, I believe that Dave from Toy Polloi and I are of a very similar age, and it does show when looking at this book, because this is basically a direct look into my childhood. Virtually everything that is featured in this book is something that I either had as a child or wanted as a child, and it really is a wonderful collection of stories. Now, I believe these are articles that Dave writes for a regular publication, which I think is called Fusion. Again, by all means, please visit the Toy Polloi Facebook, Twitter, YouTube page. I'm sure the details will be there. But this is indeed something that could well have come from my own memory, because everything about this is all stuff I remember. And it's just so nice to see everything all assembled into one little package, and best of all, it's a hardback annual just like they were when we were kids in the 80s. And it's funny when looking through this, because there's one article regarding the topic of repro, and as Dave has done videos on this before, he does mention the fact that, certain groups have a collecting rule book that everyone must obey. And it's quite something to think that Toy Polloi is without question probably the nicest, friendliest channels in this YouTube world of toy collecting. And the fact that he has been kicked off some of these groups speaks volumes about the people who run such groups. It's quite ridiculous, but it's nice to see his thoughts down in writing. Now, next up, we have my unofficial guide to vintage Transformers. And the reason I'm reading this again is that I've gone back to watching the cartoons. Now, bearing in mind, when Transformers came out, I was 10 years old. And I remember watching it quite religiously on TV. However, by the time that the second series was running, and of course going into the Transformers movie, I was then in high school at that point and stopped collecting toys. So I had never actually seen the Transformers movie until very recently. And my God, that's some hard-hitting stuff. And I can only imagine that back in the day, the theaters would have been flooded with kids' tears. Some quite brutal stuff in that movie, it has to be said. But because we got introduced to a whole slew of new characters, I had to go back to my book here to sort of learn more about them. And as a result of doing so, I found myself sort of wanting to collect more G1 Transformers. Now, previously, I'd completed the 1984 wave and had a spattering of a number of additional ones that I either had as a kid or liked as a kid. And I said, once I got my Jetfire, which was a holy grail of mine, I said, that's it, no more Transformers. But I'm now sort of thinking, maybe I could get a few more. So from looking at this book, which I should mention as well, is written by J.E. Alvarez. I'm assuming you can still get this on Amazon. I think this one is priced at $29.99, but I don't think I paid that much for it. But it's a really good guide to all the Transformers toys that were available in the 80s. So for example, I'm considering getting all the sort of major characters that were in seasons 1 and seasons 2 of the cartoon. So things, for example, Inferno, Grapple, I never thought I would want to get those, but having watched them in the cartoon again, I'm thinking, oh, could do those ones. Furthermore, some of the more, I was going to say obscure, that's not the correct term, but when they introduced a lot of new characters for the movie and then series 3 of the cartoon, things like Cup and Blur, tempting, not sure yet, but going back to this book, it's a wonderful reference guide, and if you are a collector or even just a fan of the G1 Transformers, great book to look at. And last of all, in this quick video, again from my friend in Scotland, Derek, finally kindly sent me a Classic Rock Legends of the 80s magazine, and this is just fantastic to go through. It's basically a who's who of metal bands and rock bands that were very popular back in the 80s. We've got a feature on the Big Four of thrash, there's spotlights on Iron Maiden, Guns N' Roses, Def Leppard, but most interestingly is their top 100 greatest rock metal albums of the 80s, because they had some stipulations, one of which was only one entry per band, and they didn't have to pick the most famous album, but they had to justify its inclusion. And as a result, this is not the top 100 you would expect to read. So for example, at number 1, they have Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath. Furthermore, in the top 10, number 10 is Nothing's Shocking by Jane's Addiction. Ride the Lightning is number 7, but with there only being one album per band, Iron Maiden are only represented at number 24 with Peace of Mind. And whilst I would tend to agree with Peace of Mind being Maiden's best 80s album, number 24 is a pretty poor display. But aside from that, it's really interesting to read why these albums were included in the top 100. Very interesting. And of course, every generation will say that their music was the best music, but I really do believe that 80s, and I'm not just talking about rock metal, I'm talking about music in general, the 80s was by far the best, most diverse music that I've ever come across, and I challenge anyone to tell me otherwise. So there you go, that's what I've been reading of late. As I said, let's enjoy books while we still can, because let's face it, they're not going to be around much longer, I don't think. And I don't know how it is in the UK, but over here in America, there really are very few places to buy magazines, and my local Walgreens and Rite Aid have a tiny section, but the prices are obscene. It's like $15 for a magazine. I mean, I remember when I was a kid in the UK, I would spend 30p, 40p to buy a smash hits or a Kerrang magazine. Dandy and Beano were 10p, but I guess times have changed. So let me know in the comments, what are you reading currently? What do you think of my little selection here? And did I pique your interest? Do you want to get something like the Toy Polloi Annual? Please let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, please share the video, please do make sure you're subscribed, and stay tuned for more videos from All Things 80s.